Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ABCs of Finance moment. My mic was turned down here a little bit this morning. Let's make sure I have that up for you. So, my apologies there. But we do want to make sure you guys are able to hear me. If I could push the right button here, that would help. There we go. All righty. Good morning. Good morning. I hope that everyone's day is off to a wonderful start. Happy Tuesday to you. Welcome to the ABCs of Finance Moment. My name is Mika McLendon. I'm the founder and CEO of Amazing Rare Rubies. And you know, we have this ABCs of Finance Moment on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. And the purpose of this particular moment is all about providing tips and nuggets to enhance our overall financial literacy, one step at a time. And so, with Amazing Rare Rubies, we are a women's organization that is designed to encourage women to become the woman God created them to be. We truly believe that when we were born, God gave us everything, and I mean everything that we need to be this Proverbs 31 woman, to be virtuous, to be everything He created us to be. But we live in a society that does not always help us in our becoming, right? We live in a society that doesn't necessarily help us practice those characteristics that's in Proverbs 31. So over the last like 5 to 6 years, and beginning to practice those traits that we call ruby traits, we have found that one of the main areas out of the 7 pillars we believe make a Proverbs 31 woman, one of the main areas, which is finance, individuals have truly been struggling with. And I know you may be asking, well, what are the other 6 pillars, right? So we have a spiritual, wellness, mindfulness, right? Finance, business, relationships, that's huge, right? And fun. And we believe if we're practicing those pillars and we're practicing these ruby traits in all of those areas of our life, it truly helps us become this Proverbs 31 virtuous woman. And again, as we've been practicing them over the last 5 to 6 years, we've truly found that individuals are really struggling with their finances. And so God laid it on my heart around the importance of financial literacy. And why aren't we really becoming in that area? And so from that, we've developed the ABCs of Finance class, which we'll share more information about that at the end. But the next class that's open is coming up in May. And it's a 4-part series that helps individuals learn about finances, the basics of finances. Because even though I'm a certified life coach, I've gone through Dave Ramsey, which has excellent information. I've gone to tons of seminars and different things of that sort. What I have found is in the financial industry overall, a lot of the approach from teaching and educating people around their finances comes from a standpoint that says you already know the basics. And so, with that, God laid on my heart the importance of individuals understanding the basic foundational informational things that we need to know. And that's what this particular moment, the ABCs of Finance moment, is all about. And so God gave us an acronym which we love. It's called LAMPS. And basically, with LAMPS, this is from Psalms 119, 105. And basically, it says that God is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. What I love about this acronym LAMPS is that we believe God is definitely the light we need to help us through this financial journey of becoming. And the LAMPS stands for L is for literacy, right? We need to educate ourselves, get the knowledge, get the information that we need. But it's not just ascertaining the knowledge, right? You've got to apply it. That's why when people say knowledge is power, I slightly disagree with that. I believe that applied knowledge is power. We've got to apply these things that we are learning. Then there's the A for accountability, because God wants us to be a good steward over everything that He's trusting us with. So the A is for accountability there. We've got to take accountability for all of these different things that we do learn. We've got to make sure not only do we learn about it, we again apply it. Remember, applied knowledge is power, not just having the knowledge. Miles Monroe once said that the wealthiest place in the world is the graveyard, because people died there with so much stuff up here in their heads, right? So we want the knowledge, yes. We want the learning, yes. The literacy, the L is important, but we have to take accountability for it when we learn it, and we've got to make sure we're applying it. The M is for management. We've got to make sure we're managing our money, right? We've got to tell it where to go. We've got to make sure that we understand how we're spending, not just how we're earning. Right? We know how we go out and make that money and bring it in, but how are we spending it? So we've got to make sure the proper management is there over our money. And that's important. The P is for planning, right? When we get that money, are we planning where it's going, or is it telling us where it's going to go? We've got to tell every dollar we make. We've got to give it a name. We've got to give it a destination. We've got to give it an assignment. And I know that sounds tedious, but it really isn't. It's about developing your plan, your goal of where you want to go. Where do you see yourself in 1 year, 3, 5, 10? Where do you see yourself in those particular years? And then you're going to work that plan, work it into your lifestyle. Part of what we talk about is the how formula. So the planning isn't as hard as it seems. Getting started may be a little bit challenging sometime for us, but that's okay. Right. And then there's the S. The S is for stability, because God intended for us to have a solid financial foundation, not this willy-nilly stuff, not 80% of American workers living paycheck to paycheck. That wasn't what he intended for us. But we've grown up in a society that immediately starts us out in getting in debt. Why do I say that? Well, think about when you graduated from high school. One of the first pieces of mail that we received is a piece of mail that said pre-approved across the top. And when you're in high school, right, you're 18 years old, getting in high school, get ready to go to college, and you're like, oh my God, pre-approved. And the first thing I know I did was I signed up for it. Now, at the time that I graduated from high school, I actually weighed 88 pounds. 88. You heard me. When I grew up, when I was at college, I ended up at about 98 pounds. Yeah, but I had a Lane Bryant credit card. What was I doing with that? My lack of financial literacy. So I was buying socks and pieces of jewelry and things like that out of Lane Bryant. Why? Because when I got to the counter to pay for whatever it was, for whatever reason that I was in there, they approved me for a credit card and I got it. So we begin this financial whirlwind in our life that takes us down this spiral. And that's not a good thing, right? And as we go down that spiral, we become individuals who are not being good stewards over our finances. So, again, that's what this ABC's finance moment is all about. So, today, let's talk a little bit about savings, right? I want to give you some information on savings here. And some of the information that I'm going to give you regarding actual statistics and things of that sort is from Bankrate. They had a survey come out. It was around February of this year, one of the most recent ones that I could find. But honestly, even though there's some change in the numbers, the change in the numbers is not necessarily for the better when you talk about pre-pandemic to now, right? So let's talk about savings a little bit. So, we've gone into the importance of understanding your net worth, understanding your assets versus your not versus, excuse me, your assets minus your liabilities, writing all of that out, making it plain. Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision, make it plain, and understand what your actual net worth is. And when you do your assets minus your liabilities, your net worth can be either positive or negative. And our goal is for you to have a positive net worth. So part of that is making sure we are saving. So a rule of thumb here for your savings is going to be that you need to be saving 15% of your income every year. Every year, at least 15%. Now, if you're in a position where you can save more than that, whoop, whoop, do it, right? But if you're not, do your best to begin to get up to 15% of your income yearly that you're actually saving. So in looking at some of the rates that were out there, I wanted to understand the average American savings account, right? So the average American has about $5,300 saved. Now I know that number sounds really good when you go, wow, okay, $5,000, that sounds great. Well, when you begin to think that we have over 300 million people in the US, yeah. And out of that, working people that work like 70, 80% or more in a year, that's 100 and almost 160 160 million people. And that was in 2019. So I didn't see current numbers on that. But of that 300 million, we know we're over a little over 50% of where though out of that 160 million people worked about 70% or more of the time the previous year. So when you think about that and you think $5,000, that's not a lot of money. Because when you look at the mean, meaning let's look at the high end of where people are saving, and then let's look at the low end of where people are saving. $5,300 is not a lot of money. Now, if you look at, and these are savings accounts where, money is kind of fluid. So these are accounts that we may be, depositing, withdrawing, a lot of action, so to speak, going on, more so short-term savings type accounts. So more of the traditional savings accounts, or maybe a high yield savings account, which is more so online. So that's where we're not going to the brick and mortar buildings, kind of walking in, hey, how you doing? This is where we're going online. There's no overhead for them, so they're able to give us a better rate when it comes down to making interest on some of the money we put in for savings, right? So $5,300 again still doesn't sound like a lot of money. But then you have where you look at all of the savings. So the average for people's retirements, for 401ks, stocks and mutual funds and all that type of stuff. And that is at like $41,000 per average American, right? So even when you think $41,000, that's still not a lot of money by any means. Why do I say that? So let me give you, based on age groups, I'm going to give you some numbers, and you know what your age is. I don't need to know that, but you can plug in to say, am I where I need to be for my age group with my savings when it comes down to planning out my future? So what I'm going to give you is the average, right? So the key is either to be average or better, right? Not to be below. So let's just kind of look at some numbers. So we found that like the 21 to 35 group, 21 to 34, I really should say, 21 to 34 group has about $3,200 in savings. And then the median, where it's everything. Remember, when I'm saying median, I mean everything. So some of these people have started to invest in their 401k, and they have stocks and things of that sort. The median is 11,000. So people 34 and down with everything have about $11,000, right? So these, again, I might have started my 401k. I have savings account. I have a money market account, or whatever the case may be, $11,000. But then my fluid account, withdrawal deposits, things of that sort, is about 3,200. That's not a lot of money. These people up to 34 years old. Check this out: 35 to 44. Fluid accounts, about $4,700. Overall, meaning, am I getting ready for my retirement? Everything, $2,700. People up to 44 years old, $2,700. At that particular point, you are about 20 years if you're looking to retire at 65. From retirement, you got $2,700. $27,000. Okay. So we can look at this and begin to say, am I where I need to be? So you need to be at least $27,000 if you're between the age of 35 to 44. Individuals that's 45 to 54, their average fluid, I'm depositing, withdrawing, I'm doing different things, is about $6,400, right? Overall, 401k, all that good stuff included, 48,000. Are you there? I know most of the people that I talk to in my audience are between 35 and 64, or 35 and 54, I should say. Are you there? Do you have $48,000 right now? Ages 55 to 64. They're at about 5,600 in a fluid account, right? And 57,000 overall. Are you there? And even if you're at these averages, and let me tell you, they're not enough by age. They're not enough for you to retire. This is on savings, don't forget, right? It's still not enough for you to retire. I'm going to give you retired numbers as well. 65 to 74, average fluid, 8,000. Overall, 60,000. When they look at that whole range, $60,000. And those that are 74 or older have about $9,300 fluid. And then check this out, it drops down, 55,000 overall in savings. So here's the thing. What I want you to really think about, we talked about the rule of thumb, and you know that your rule of thumb is where you need 15%, 15% of your income being saved every year, right? We already know that. But here's what I really want you to think about. If you're in your 30s, ask yourself, do you have at least 2 times your salary saved? These are some rule of thumbs. So remember, I gave you the average of what the survey showed from bankrate.com, right? I gave you the average of that. But here's some rule of thumb averages I want to give you, because this is a little bit easier for you to look at and process, right? So if you're 30 years old, do you have at least 2 times your salary saved? At least two. So let's say you make $50,000 a year, you're 30 years old. Do you have $100,000 saved? That's the bottom line. Do you have $100,000 saved? Yes or no? Your 40s, you're in your 40s. Do you have at least 3 times your salary saved? So if you're making $50,000, do you have at least $150,000 of your salary saved? If you're in your 40s, these are rule of thumbs, right? If you're in your 40s, you need to have at least 3,000, at 3 times your salary saved, at least. If you're in your 50s, you're in your 50s, you should have about 6 times your salary. So again, using that same number, you making $50,000, do you have $300,000 saved? Do you have $300,000 saved? That's important. That's a rule of thumb for you. Now, I'm in my 50s. I know a lot of people in my circle, right? Because the people that I am out with, or couples that my husband and I may go to dinner with, or whatever the case may be, they're in our age range. Do they have, if they're making $50,000 a year, do they have $300,000 saved? That's something we all need to be thinking about. And then if you're in your 60s, so now you're at that point where you're getting close to retirement. And so many places don't even give pensions anymore, right? If you're in your 60s, the rule of thumb is basically saying that you need 8 to 10 times your salary saved. 8 to 10 times your salary saved. Have to ask yourself, and if you're making $50,000, it's the same thing. You got 500,000 saved, have a meal. Do you have it saved, right? And then there's, if you're like 67 and up, pretty much you're at that retirement stage. Do you have at least 10 times or more saved? Now, the older you get, that 8 times, 10 times, 12 times, wherever you're desiring to be, doesn't need to be as much, because you're getting older, right? So the older you get, you should be using that money at this particular point to live off of, right? So you got to begin to ask yourself, are you where you need to be when it comes down to your savings? Are you putting away what you need to be putting away? Are you putting away 15% of your income? Because that is going to be extremely important. You need to be putting away that 15%. And again, if you're in a position where you can do more, I encourage you to do more. Do more. Do more. So the more, the better, right? But then when you think about, again, going back to our averages for the United States, $5,000 saved in a fluid account for the average American is not a lot of money. The average American household is $5,000 a month to operate. Yeah. And in our ABCs of Finance class, we work out and look at we use that $5,000 actually as an example when we're working out budgeting, when we're working out, calculating net worth, when we're working out the DTI, your debt to income ratio, when we're working out examples of, will a creditor approve you or will he not, based on that. When we begin to walk through all of that, people look at, wow, I'm making $5,000 a month, but I'm overspending in my necessity pillars of my life. And one of the biggest areas that people overspend in unknowingly, because all they're thinking about is, I can afford to make the payment. Well, 2 areas I'm going to tell you. They say, I can afford to make the payment. So 2 areas that they begin to overspend in without really, really thinking about it is a house note and a car note. And when I say house note, if you don't have a house, it could be your rent. I know people who are in 2 bedrooms that's paying almost $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. $2,000 almost $2,000 a month for 2 bedrooms. Oh my God. And if you look at that and think about what percentage of my income am I using to pay for my housing, a lot of times we're way out of whack on that. And we're not going out to purchase based on, I need to make sure if I am in a position that I need to borrow money, meaning I need creditors to approve me. If I'm in that position, then I need to be looking at my finances. If I'm making 5,000 a month, as I said, that's the number I like to use because it's easier to work with. If I'm making $5,000 a month, am I properly allocating my money to the proper pillar, the proper, my housing, my transportation, those important things that I have to have? Am I allocating it properly? Because most people are not. And so most people are spending 70% or more on housing. And if you're spending 70% of what you bring home on your house, you're already setting yourself up for failure where you're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. You don't have enough to meet the end of the month. You're definitely not doing 15% of your savings per year based off of your income because you're out of whack with how much you're spending on your home. And these are some things that we really sit down and talk about and dig into when we do our ABCs of Finance class. And we do that because once people begin to see where their money is going, remember when I talked about lamps here and I talked about, making sure we're planning and telling our money where to go. When people begin to see where their money truly is going, they have that, oh my God, aha moment. This is why I'm not able to do my savings where I need to do it. Or this is why I'm not able to do A, B, and C when I need to do it. So part of this is making sure, again, are we saving where we need to? When we look at our savings and we're going, let's talk about this thing. If you're 30, do you have 2 times your salary? If you're 50, do you have 6 times your salary? Where are you when it comes down to your actual savings for yourself? When it comes down to retirement, the average American, the average person is going to need at least 80% of their current income to live off of in retirement. Do you have that? Most people need to get to the millionaire status for retirement. And the people think millionaire and go, oh my God, I'm filthy rich. No, you're not. The everyday average millionaire, that's not even considered filthy rich anymore. Why? So I'm going to pull out my handy dandy calculator here because I want to give you the right number. And I think I got it in my head, but I want to tell it the right way. So if I take $1 million and let's just say you have $1 million in your 401k and your other assets, mutual funds, savings, etc. So let's just say you have $1 million, right? If you take that $1 million, right? So I'm doing 1 million on my calculator. And normally when you're in retirement for your 401ks, your retirement funds, all of those things, the average go-to yearly withdrawal is 4%. Let me do it this way. Sorry, my hand way over here. You can't see it. 4%, right? So if I take $1 million minus 4%, right? How much is that? $40,000 a year. Now you might say, well, Dad, I got $1 million. That's all I'm going to get a year in retirement is 40,000 off of $1 million. Well, pretty much the goal is for you to make sure you're maintaining where you need to be based on your projected longevity of your life, right? So the average 401k or average retirement plan brings in about 7% a year, right? So if you're making 7% a year, but you're withdrawing 4% of your $1 million, right? How much is that? $40,000. That's not a lot of money. So people who are everyday millionaires, when people say, I made my first million, that sounds really, really good. But if you're making your first million and you're in your 60s or you're getting ready to retire, you're going to have on average about 40 grand a year to live off of. Why? Because we're looking at taking 4% out on average. That is the rule of thumb. 4% out for your retirement. So now that million doesn't look as great, right? And let's just say you decide, well, yeah, I got $1 million, but I'm going to do 8%. You could. That's 80 grand. That's still not a whole lot, right? You guys get what I'm saying here? You get where I'm going with that? So you got to make sure, are you prepared for your retirement? Start with your savings. Look at where you are. Now, I always encourage you to make sure you have your emergency fund and you have your living expense fund. And the emergency fund, we always say if you can get to $1,000 so that you can have it for small, unplanned emergencies, that's great, right? And small, unplanned emergencies are going to be those things like I got a flat tire. I had to go to urgent care. I had to get pay money for a trip at school for my kids. I had to replace my microwave. Those are small things that $1,000 will keep you from swiping a credit card or going into debt, borrowing money. Right. So if you can get to that $1,000 emergency fund to start, that's great. Then you need to look at, once you do that, start building up your living expense fund. Your living expense fund becomes part of this savings that we're talking about in those traditional accounts that, the purpose of it is not for you to really make money off of this. It's for, if you really need that money, you can get your hands on it. So this is going to be in a savings account that's making probably less than 1%. I think the average right now is 0.07 or 0.06%, something like that on the savings account. But again, this is not for you to get filthy rich. This is for you to have that money sitting there. And if something does happen, like you lose your job, right, you have your living expense fund to go to. And I encourage people to have at a minimum of 3 months. With this pandemic, shoot, we may need to have like 6-12 months, right? But begin to be right where you are. That's what's important about your financial journey. It's not about starting where other individuals are. It's about starting where you are. So get that living expense fund going, right? Where you can save at least 3 months of your living expenses. And if you are a household that spends $5,000 a month in living expenses, you need $15,000. Yeah. And we begin to talk about that as we talk about the financial pillars in our ABCs of Finance class as well, to understand, are we allocating appropriately, and what does that really look like? Okay, so start that savings. Begin to be, again, right where you are. If you don't have your emergency fund, start there. Then get to where you are able to put at least 15% of your income away yearly, after you've also done your living expense fund. So now, again, in our ABCs of Finance class, this is where we really dig into this stuff. We talk about attaining debt-free status, budgeting down to zero, and creating cash flow. And yes, there are ways to create cash flow to begin to be right where you are. Again, doesn't matter where anyone else is. Our next class is going to be May the 12th. That class is on a Thursday. It's at 7 p.m. The classes are 2 hours for each section, and this is a 4-part series. So it's a total of 8 hours of financial literacy learning, broken down into 2 hours per week. So it would be 4 Thursdays in a row. This class at this particular time, we have a great offer going. This is on regularly at like $1,000 class. We normally do it and try to put it out there for about $250. We're doing specials right now. We've been doing it since we started our first class in March. It's $100 for all 4 parts. That's like $25 a class. And it's a lot of information. Then we have a handy dandy ABCs of Finance workbook. I love this workbook. You can see mine is all kind of what do you call it when you do all your tabbing and stuff? I'm one of those folks, and my notes are all in here. But we really get down to business and talk about different things that's going to help us attain debt-free status and budget down to zero and create cash flow. But this workbook works hand in hand with the class. I encourage, if you sign up for the class, definitely get the workbook. You can purchase it off of our website, which is also on the ticker across the bottom of the screen. But just in case that's going by too fast for you or got cut off, www.amazingrealrubies.com. You can get a copy of this, and you can sign up for the class. Again, that next class is going to be May the 12th. May 12th. It's a Thursday class at 7 p.m. 2-hour class. It's definitely worth taking time to invest in your own financial literacy. As always with Amazing Real Rubies, we pray that this session has been beneficial to you. We encourage you to always keep God in every decision made, every lesson learned, and every message taught. And until we meet again, make it a Ruby day. Thanks so much for joining. You guys have a blessed one. Stay blessed and have a safe week. Thanks.